Let me just finish my Skittle. Hey, hi, hello, welcome. I'm your host, Céline, and today we're gonna do a little January wrap-up. For those of you that don't know, that means I'm gonna talk about the books I read in January. So the first book I read is The Unbearable Lightness of Being by Milan Kundera, who's a Czech author, and it's a really great book. I really loved it. I feel like I would give it a 3.5 or a 4 out of 5. It's essentially the story of this couple in the Czech Republic around the Cold War, kind of how they fall in love, how one of them is cheating, and it's mixed in with some philosophy, some thoughts about life, and it's told from the perspective of the author, to the point where he's kind of breaking the fourth wall, which I didn't really think you could do in fiction, but I guess you can. He'll literally write, I don't know why they did this. It's like, sir, but you wrote it. That's your character. Even though I get it at the same time, because a lot of authors have said, like, I didn't make this shit up. It came to me. I just wrote it down. I'm just the messenger. So in that sense, I guess my boy Kundera's doing his thing. It was really interesting to learn more about, learn anything about kind of the Czech Republic. I really didn't know anything, as well as to get some little philosophy, and he makes it really accessible. Basically says things that you're like, holy shit, I feel this, and I could never put it into words. I feel attacked, I feel seen. So let me read you some of those. First quote, "And therein lies the whole of man's plight. Human time does not turn in a circle, it runs ahead in a straight line. That is why man cannot be happy. Happiness is the longing for repetition." And that is on depression, folks. The next thing I read was In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, and it is the apparently the first non-fiction true crime novel, and so in that sense it is kind of groundbreaking style-wise. For my fellow true crime lovers, this is brutal. This was really hard. It tells the story of this mass murder of a family, the Clutter family, in Holcomb, Kansas in 1959. And basically Truman Capote went there before a break in the case, like right after the crimes happened. Mass murders like that weren't really common, especially in teeny tiny towns. And so he goes to Holcomb with his childhood friend, Harper Lee, who, by the way, is the author of To Kill a Mockingbird, so that's kind of cool. My cat just decided to sit in a shelf. Yeah, he goes there to write a book about how this tragedy has affected the community and how the people there have really changed to a community that never used to lock their doors to now people who are literally staying up all night with all the lights on, gun by the door, and everyone is awake, not even in pajamas, because they're so scared, because no one knows who could have possibly done this. It's one of the most loved families in the community, and you grow to love them as well. Within like 20 pages, you're like, oh, these people are amazing. They're so kind, they're so helpful. Even the dad is like low-key a feminist icon, especially for the 50s, so like, go off, king. A man's a legend. So, yeah, and then he describes when they found the bodies, and it's terrifying. Like, it was just horrifying. I wanted to throw up. Like, there's just something about reading it that was so awful, and reading it from the perspective of the person who found them, which was even worse. Read it and you'll see. Stylistically, it reads like a fiction novel. Unfortunately, it is not. And then while they're in Holcomb investigating, or like talking to people, there's a break in the case. And so good old Capote befriends the killers, and to the point of like helping them get better lawyers so that they can postpone their death sentence, because you know they're going to be hanged. And kind of a spoiler, I guess, but he, I guess, decided that his book couldn't be good unless the criminals were hanged. So he keeps putting it off so he has more time to get to know them, but doesn't try to get it completely stopped because he's like, well, not for my book, which is kind of fucked. This isn't even in the book. This is just some research I did because I'm crazy. The criminals ask him to come to their hangings, and he sees the first one, which is the one he's not even closest to, and it takes about 20 minutes for the guy to die, which is awful. And he can't stay for the second one, goes to his car and cries for like 3 hours, and apparently was never the same after that. His like long-term relationship with his partner kind of got destroyed. He started drinking more, and he just kind of hit a downward spiral. I don't know if he ever wrote anything again after that. I think he died fairly young. I'd say like a 4.5 to a 5 out of 5. Just stylistically amazing. Also the fact that it's kind of the first of its kind. At least I find it a little bit hard to believe that didn't happen until 1966. I feel like that's maybe just for Anglophone literature. Someone let me know if you know, because I feel like there's no way it took 1,966 years to get a true crime novel written in this way. Maybe it's just because you do get the perspective of the killers, which is very interesting, but I was also really glad that we got a lot more about the family, because I feel like that's the difference between like a true crime podcast and this, where the true crime podcast will very much be like, they cut their toes off, they ate them, their Army Hammer, and talk about like how traumatic the killer's life was, but then never really talk about the victim, which I feel like is what makes this so real and so visceral and just heartbreaking. Because realistically, they're just lives that are cut short, and it's so awful. I was just so horrified that people like this exist. So then I moved on to The Shining by Stephen King, and it was so good. For those of you who live under a rock, The Shining is about the Torrance family who goes to the Overlook Hotel for the winter in, I think, the 60s, because Jack Torrance, aka Papa Bear, it's not what anyone calls him in the book, but I'm gonna do it. Papa Bear is a recovering alcoholic and needs a job as anything. So he goes to be the caretaker for the hotel, which closes in the winter because there's way too much snow. So cue cabin fever. The book was great because every little detail is explained, and also the reasoning for the hauntings, you can say, is completely different. Kubrick does the really unoriginal thing, which is takes the 80s trope that was popular at the time and uses that, which, you know, everyone's like, oh my god, Kubrick, you're so good. No, it's not original. Literally every horror movie in the 80s did that. So, sir, the least he could have done is stuck to why the place is haunted. Like, I think in the book that's so much more interesting. And every haunting is explained, like the woman in the bathtub is really explained and it makes sense, and every detail that's there is there for a reason, which I really enjoy. And this is my second King book, the first one being The Green Mile, which, obsessed, might be my favorite book of all time now. So I'm really enjoying Stephen King. If you have any recommendations, throw them my way, because I would love that, whether it's by Stephen King or like an author who does a similar style, or just like thrillers or stories like that. But I will say I really did not like the ending. I felt like it was too neat and tidy, too perfect. I kind of wanted more death. I feel like this is becoming a theme with me, where I'm like, I want them to die. I don't know, like, give me, not everything has to be like a fairly happy ending. It didn't really match the rest of the book, or yeah, it didn't, forgot that I was talking about books. It didn't really match the rest of the book, and therefore kind of ruined it for me. Kind of took me out of it. I was like, okay. The main part of the novel would probably be more like a 4, 4.5, and then the ending gets like a 3 because, sir. And I definitely will not be reading Dr. Sleep because I read like the first chapter of it at the back of the book that I had, and I don't know, I didn't really care. It didn't feel as interesting, and also since I didn't like the ending, I don't I don't want to continue that. Would rather just pretend that that's not how it ended. Next, I read How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi. I listened to the audiobook, which was read by the author himself. He starts in a really disarming way, where he kind of calls himself out, which I felt like really helped it, especially as a white person. It definitely made me feel more open to listening and more open to criticism, which I think is a really, really smart way to do it. I know that he shouldn't have to do that, but I did think it was a really smart technique, especially for people who are less open to hearing from another perspective. And I just learned so much, not just about like oh, how to be an anti-racist, but also about history, statistics. Like, this is the perfect book for if you want to be able to like go and talk to someone and be like, no, this is, if they're like, racism isn't real, all lives matter, then you can pull out the statistics and be like, yeah, well, this happened, and this is the number of times it happened, and this is the statistic, and this is the history of this word, and this is this. Like, it's all just so perfectly written. Like, the style is accessible. He pulls stories from his own life, but then also pulls facts, history. It's just, it's so good. I'll definitely have to reread it and really take it in even more. But I feel like this is definitely like I feel like it's a 5 out of 5. Next, I finished a poetry book that I was reading. It's called Crush by Richard Sicken, and Richard Sicken is a gay poet. I think he's from the States, and it was so good. It was beautifully written. The imagery is gorgeous. Just some really beautiful lines. I do want to buy my own copy because I borrowed it from the library, because I really want to be able to like sit with it and reread it and not feel so rushed, and be able to like mark up the copy and fuck that bitch up. I've always been kind of afraid of poetry because I felt like I was too dumb for it and I didn't understand things. And then my parents got me this poetry book that I'm reading, Dearly by Margaret Atwood, which I'm loving, and I'm taking my time with it, rereading the poems, like looking up words I don't know, you know, not being ashamed of not knowing things and of learning, and then also underlining lines that I really love. And so I want to be able to do that with Crush, and so I'm starting to like dip my toes into poetry, and I'm really enjoying it. This poetry was really beautiful yet accessible, which we love. I would give Crush a 4 out of 5, I think, so far. That might change as I reread it, but I think that's where it's at. And then I read I'm Afraid of Men by Vivek Shraya. I might have butchered that, so I'm sorry. I listened to the audiobook, and it was a really short read, but I feel like I would give it like a 2.5 or a 3 out of 5. I'm Afraid of Men was basically a first-person telling of a trans woman of color in Canada's experiences with men, being raised as a boy, then being what she thought was a gay man, and then realizing she was trans, and kind of how she experiences life and how all these experiences have shaped her and have shown her that men are trash and are terrifying. It was a really interesting perspective. I feel like I don't really know about trans women's perspectives, especially trans women of color. Plus she's Canadian, so I was really looking forward to this book, but I just feel like it didn't dive deeply enough, especially after How to Be an Anti-Racist. It did teach me a lot, but I feel like I was just missing a little bit more. Like, I wanted some statistics, I wanted some history, I wanted some like hard facts, so I could be like, yeah, I can go tell people off and be like, these are the facts, bitch. So I'll just have to do that research myself. I do really like the way she writes, so I might look into other stuff she's written. And then lastly, I read this trash can of a book, Je l'aimais by Anna Gevalda. Hated it. I would give this like a 1.5 out of 5. It's a novella. It's pretty short, and it's basically about this lady whose husband just left her with her young kids, so she goes on like this mini vacation to his family's like cottage chalet basically, and hangs out with like her soon-to-be ex-father-in-law, and he kind of just tells her about like his life and his past loves. Stylistically, I really disliked it because it was boring. She wrote it as basically dialogue the entire time, and at that point, why not just make it a play? Or like write the actual experiences as they were. Like, I would have been so much more interested and invested if when the father-in-law was telling his stories, we were just seeing them instead of hearing like, and then I thought this. Like, just fucking tell me, just show it to me, don't tell me. So yeah, not a huge fan. So I definitely would not recommend this. I wouldn't waste my time. So that was my January wrap up. Those are all the books I read this year. This year, sis. Those are all the books I read. Hi. Those are all the books I read this January. Let me know what you read. Let me know if you read any of the same books, what you thought of them. Let me know if you read any of the books I recommended or absolutely hated. Like this video, please. Also, please subscribe. I will love you forever. And stay safe out there, y'all. Peace out. Say hello. Hi. I am Leo, and I'm very grumpy. I'm a fan, I'm a stan. I'm a Stephen King fan. I'm a fan, I'm a stan, I'm a Stephen King fan.